My best friend's name is Rhiannon, and she has been warning me about men since we were 11 years old, which is when she took me aside in the bathroom of a bar mitzvah we had been invited to by a mutual classmate, and told me, with the specific gravity she reserved for her most serious pronouncements, that Jonah Brickman was not to be trusted because he had, at recess the previous Tuesday, told 3 different girls that they were his favorite in the same afternoon, and that I needed to understand, even at 11, that some boys were going to do that their entire lives, and that the trick was learning to see them before they got too close to you. I did not, at 11, entirely understand what Rhiannon was talking about. I did, however, understand that Rhiannon was serious because Rhiannon was serious about very few things, and when she was serious, you paid attention. Over the subsequent 24 years, Rhiannon was serious in that specific bathroom of a bar mitzvah way about exactly 4 men. 3 of them were men she warned me about. The 4th was her own husband, Davy, whom she had decided at 31 was the one for reasons she had explained to me over a bottle of wine in her backyard. Reasons which had turned out to be correct because Davy and Rhiannon are now on year 6 of a marriage that is, as far as I can tell from the outside and from my unusually privileged position as Rhiannon's best friend, a genuinely good marriage, the kind where both people have become more themselves rather than less. The 3 men Rhiannon warned me about, in order, my first boyfriend Teague in high school, who had turned out to be exactly the liar Rhiannon had identified. She had clocked him at a school dance by watching the specific way he looked at other girls when he was dancing with me. A man I dated for 2 years in my late 20s named Pritchett, who had turned out to be a functional alcoholic with a second apartment across town that I did not find out about until the 18th month, by which point Rhiannon had been quietly suggesting I look at his credit card statements for a year. And finally, the man I married, whose name was Corin, and about whom Rhiannon had been warning me for the entirety of our 3-year engagement, and who, at our wedding reception on a Saturday in September, caught the bouquet, no, she caught the bouquet, and whispered it to me again, for what I now understand was the last time she was ever going to warn me. Because after a certain point, with a certain kind of warning, the person warning you has to stop because there is nothing more they can say. I want to tell you about Rhiannon because the story does not work unless you understand her. Rhiannon is not a cynical person. This is the thing that always surprises people who meet her. She is warm. She is a kindergarten teacher. She has a specific unforced patience that kindergarten teachers have, which is the patience of a person who has, every day for 15 years, watched very small humans fail at basic tasks and has learned in the watching that failure is mostly a matter of timing and that most people figure things out eventually if you give them space. She is funny. She throws the best birthday parties of any adult I have ever known because she approaches them with the same seriousness with which she approaches her classroom parties, which means that there are crafts and a clearly structured sequence of activities and a piñata that she has chosen based on the personality of the birthday person and has, in many cases, made herself. She cries at commercials. She has, since we were 14, kept a notebook in which she writes down the names of the people she loves, and she has, I happen to know, never removed a single name, even from people who have moved away or whose friendship has drifted. My name has been in that notebook for 23 years. I have seen the page. I cried the first time I saw it when we were 16, and Rhiannon had handed me the notebook across her bedroom floor and said, "Lark, you are on page 4, between Anna and Bryce, because I wrote the names in the order I met the people. I am still between Anna and Bryce. Bryce has been dead for 11 years. Rhiannon has not crossed his name out. I say all this because I want you to understand that when Rhiannon warned me about Corin, she was not warning me out of some broader suspicion of men, or out of some personal injury, or out of the kind of reflexive negativity that some women perform about their friends' relationships. Rhiannon loved men in general. Rhiannon loved Davy specifically. Rhiannon had, in the 3 weeks before I met Corin, attended Corin's cousin's baby shower with me. It was how we met Corin and me at his cousin's baby shower because the cousin was a work friend of Rhiannon's husband's sister. And Rhiannon had, that same afternoon, met Corin's father, his 2 aunts, his younger brother, and his mother, and she had formed opinions about all of them, most of which were positive. The opinion she had formed about Corin, who had not been at the baby shower because he had been at a work thing, was based entirely on a conversation she had with Corin's younger brother Felix, a conversation which had lasted approximately 7 minutes, during which Felix, who was 24, had made a joke about his older brother's type, a joke that Rhiannon had not found funny, and which she had, 2 weeks later, when I came home from my first date with Corin, described to me in the following words, "Lark, His brother said something about his type. He said it like a warning. He said it like a man who has watched his brother do the same thing over and over and who is tired of watching. I could not tell you what exactly it was, but I could tell you that I left that shower thinking about it, and I'm still thinking about it now, and I'm going to need you to be careful. I was, at that point, 31 years old. I had been, for the previous year and a half, single after the end of the Pritchett thing. I had been, I thought, in a good place. I had gone out on a first date with Corin because Felix, the younger brother, had apparently told his mother, who had told Corin's aunt, who had told Rhiannon's husband's sister that Corin had noticed me at the baby shower's after party, which had been held that evening, which I had attended even though Corin had not been at the shower itself, which is a thing I realized in retrospect I should have paid attention to, and that Corin had asked for my number. Corin called me on a Tuesday. He asked me out for the following Friday. He picked a restaurant I had mentioned in a brief exchange at the after party that I had been wanting to try. He showed up on time. He was charming in a way that was, I noted even at the time, practiced. He asked me questions. He remembered from that brief exchange 2 weeks earlier 2 specific things I had said, and he referenced them both in ways that were neither heavy-handed nor off-handed. He was 34. He worked in finance, in a specific area of finance I will not describe because it would identify him. He was not overly handsome, which I liked. He had a slight gap between his 2 front teeth, which made his smile real. He wore a watch that was, I later learned, more expensive than it looked, which he had inherited from his grandfather and did not mention on the first date but did mention on the second. He was, in short, what Rhiannon had learned to call, over 24 years of watching me date, good on paper. I came home that night and I sat in Rhiannon's kitchen at 11 p.m. because Rhiannon and Davy lived 6 blocks from where I lived at the time. And I walked over and I told her about the date and Rhiannon listened, and when I was done she said, "Lark, okay, I hear you. I want to like him. Tell me 3 things he said that surprised you." I could not think of any. Rhiannon waited. I finally said, "He asked me about my grandmother. When I mentioned her in passing, he asked me a follow-up question about her that was specific." Rhiannon said, "Good, that's 1. Give me 2 more." I could not. She did not push. She said, "Okay, that's fine. First dates are first dates. Give it time." We went on more dates. I was, across the next 3 months, in what I thought was love, or at least in the specific feeling that I had been trained by my previous relationships to identify as love, which is the feeling of being reliably thought about by a man who is attentive to the logistics of your life. Corin was, for those 3 months, an extraordinary boyfriend in the sense that he managed the logistics of a relationship with a competence I had not previously encountered. He remembered appointments I had mentioned offhandedly. He suggested restaurants that matched specific moods I had described. He scheduled trips that I had to admit were well conceived. He was, in the realm of logistics, the best boyfriend I had ever had. Rhiannon said, in month 4, in her kitchen again, over wine again, "Lark, I'm going to ask you something. Don't answer right away. Just sit with it." Okay. When Corin does the logistical things, the reservations, the plans, the remembering, does it feel like he is doing them for you, or does it feel like he is doing them at you? I sat with it. "I don't know what the difference is," I said. "I think you do." I sat longer. "It feels like he is presenting them," I said, finally. "Like a meal. Like, here's the meal I have prepared for you and now you will eat it." "Okay." "That doesn't mean he isn't doing them for me." "No, it doesn't. It's an observation. Sit with it." I sat with it for another 3 months. Corin continued to be, by every visible metric, a good boyfriend. He met my parents. He charmed them. My father, who is a retired civil engineer, liked him. My mother, who is a semi-retired family therapist, was more reserved in a way I did not entirely understand at the time, but did not comment. She said only, after the first dinner, "Lark, he's a very confident man. I will be interested to see what happens when something doesn't go his way." So, which is the kind of thing a semi-retired family therapist says when she does not want to say the thing she's actually thinking. Nothing, in those early months, failed to go his way. He proposed in month 14. He proposed well. He had taken me to a specific small hotel in the mountains that I had, a year and a half earlier, mentioned wanting to visit. He had booked a specific room that, he informed me over dinner, was the room I had once mentioned seeing in a magazine and wanting to stay in. I had not remembered mentioning this. He had, he said, made a note. He had been carrying the note in his phone for a year and a half, waiting for the right moment to deploy it. He proposed at sunset on the balcony of that room with a ring that was beautiful and that was, I later learned, insured under a policy Corin had taken out 6 months earlier, which was the kind of detail Corin managed for fun. I said yes. Of course I said yes. The weekend was, by every external measure, perfect. We came home on Sunday evening. I called Rhiannon from my apartment. Lark. Rhiannon. He proposed. There was a pause. Not a long pause. A pause of maybe a second and a half, but I heard it. I heard it the way you hear a pause from a person who has known you since you were 11, which is that you hear the shape of what she is not saying. Then Rhiannon said, Lark, congratulations. Tell me everything. I told her everything. She asked good questions. She was warm. She said, at the end, I'm so happy for you. I love you. I am so happy. She did not say she thought he was the one. She did not ask about the wedding. She did not suggest dates. She did not, which I noticed but chose not to notice, offer to throw me an engagement party. Rhiannon had thrown engagement parties for 3 other friends in the preceding 4 years. The absence of the offer was a thing I did not comment on because I had decided somewhere on the drive home from the mountain hotel that I was going to be a person who was getting married to Corin. And that being a person who was getting married to Corin required me to not notice certain things. I noticed anyway. Rhiannon did not, across the 3-year engagement that followed, ever tell me not to marry him. She did not use those words. She was too careful and too loving and too experienced with the patterns of my life to think that telling me not to marry him would work. What she did instead was watch and ask occasional questions. And, when the occasion presented itself, make small, precise observations that she would deliver and then, visibly, stop herself from elaborating on. In the specific way that Rhiannon had developed across 24 years as a technique for getting me to arrive at my own conclusions without feeling steered. Example 1. A dinner at Corin's parents' house in year 1 of the engagement. Rhiannon and Davy were there because Corin's parents had, in their specific warm style, invited my best friend and her husband along with my parents to a welcome to the family dinner that they had organized. I want to tell you that Corin's parents were lovely. Corin's mother, Adele, was a retired librarian. Corin's father, Theo, was an architect. Both of them had clearly, across 36 years of marriage, developed into the kind of couple who know each other's sentences and finish them with affection. Corin's younger brother Felix was there, with his then-girlfriend Hannah, whom he had been dating for 4 years. The meal was, as Corin's mother's meals always were, very good. At some point during the dinner, Corin told a story about a colleague of his named Brandon. The colleague, according to the story, had made a mistake at work that had cost the firm some money. Corin had, according to the story, pointed out the mistake to their superiors in a way that had led to the colleague being reprimanded and eventually managed out. Corin told the story with a slight smile on his face. He told it as a kind of victory. At the end of the story, he said, Brandon's been looking for a new job for 4 months now. I heard he's considering something in Phoenix. Good for him. Phoenix suits him. The table laughed lightly. Corin's mother smiled in a way that was not quite a smile. Corin's father made a noise of approval. Felix was looking at his plate. Hannah was looking at Felix. I laughed along with the table, because you do. Rhiannon did not. Rhiannon was sitting across from me. She met my eyes for exactly 1 second. She did not raise her eyebrows. She did not smile. She did not frown. She simply looked at me for 1 second and then returned to her plate. In the car, on the drive home, with Davy driving because Rhiannon had had 2 glasses of wine and Davy had had 1, Rhiannon said from the back seat, that story about Brandon, Lark. What about it? He told it at dinner. Yes, like a victory. I know what you mean, but... Lark. He told a story at his parents' dinner table, in front of you, in front of your parents, in front of me and Davy, about engineering, the firing of a colleague, and he told it with pleasure. I am not drawing a conclusion. I am making an observation. A man who tells that story at that table in that tone is showing you something about himself. He thinks it is charm. It is not charm. Sit with it. I sat with it. I sat with it for about a week. Then I rationalized it. Brandon had, after all, made the mistake. Corin had, after all, done what the situation required. Corin was a person of principle. Corin was just being transparent. Corin was not a guy who sugar-coated things, etc. Example 2, 16 months into the engagement. A weekend at a friend's lake house, the friend being a friend of Corin's named Wells, who had been in Corin's fraternity in college. Rhiannon and Davy were invited because Davy had played lacrosse with Wells in high school. It was, again, one of those weekends that looked, from the outside, like the kind of weekend that happens when a group of 30-somethings have been successful enough in their 20s that someone in the group has a lake house. Wells' girlfriend was there. She was named Ixla. She was 28. She was visibly uncomfortable the entire weekend in ways I did not, at the time, have the language to name, but that Rhiannon did. On Saturday afternoon, Rhiannon and I were on the dock, ostensibly reading, but actually watching Wells and Corin and another college friend, Dashiell, play some kind of dock game that involved shoving each other into the water. It was loud. Wells shoved Dashiell off the dock at one point with enough force that Dashiell came up spluttering and said something that ended the game abruptly. The tone shifted. Wells laughed. Wells said, "Oh, come on, Dash. Don't be soft." Corin laughed with him. 10 minutes later, in the house, Isla was making iced tea at the counter, and Wells walked past her and said something under his breath that I did not hear, but that I saw Isla's shoulders respond to. Her shoulders went very slightly up and then down. Corin, who was standing near the fridge, laughed. He didn't say anything. He just laughed. That night, in the guest room, Rhiannon came in to borrow hair ties. She closed the door. She said, "Lark." "Yes." "Wells is a bad man." Rhiannon. "Lark, I have been watching him for a day and a half. He is a bad man. He is a man who is rough with his girlfriend in ways I can see from across the room, and I have been watching for exactly the kind of things I have been trained to watch for in children who have been roughed up. And I am telling you, as a person who watches children for a living, Wells is not okay." Okay. Your fiancé has known Wells for 16 years. Your fiancé laughs at his jokes. Your fiancé played shoving games with him on the dock today. Your fiancé, when Wells said whatever he said to Isla at the counter, laughed. Rhiannon. I am making an observation. Your fiancé has a bad friend. Many people have a bad friend. The question is not whether he has one. The question is whether he has reserved any part of himself from being like the bad friend. I do not yet know the answer to that question. I want to know the answer. I am telling you what I am watching. I sat with it. I rationalized it. Everyone had college friends you didn't like. Corin was loyal. Corin wasn't Wells. Corin laughed because he was being polite, etc. Example 3, 9 months before the wedding. A fight Corin and I had about the guest list in which I had wanted to invite my cousin Tavi, who is non-binary, and Corin had, while not saying no outright, said a thing along the lines of, "I just want to make sure my grandmother is comfortable. You know how she is. She's 87. And had, in the subsequent 10 minutes, walked me through a specific chain of reasoning in which his grandmother's comfort became the central organizing principle of the seating chart, and in which Tavi, by the end of the reasoning, was either not invited or was invited but was seated at a specific table with my younger cousins. They loved them, in a way that was clearly, even at the time, a kind of soft segregation. I had that night not fought Corin very hard on it. I had said, "Okay, we'll think about it." I had called Rhiannon the next morning. Rhiannon had said, "Lark, how do you feel about what just happened?" "I feel weird." "Say more." I feel like he did a thing that sounded reasonable but wasn't reasonable." "Yes." "I feel like he protected his grandmother's comfort at Tavi's expense and made it sound like he was protecting me." "Yes." Rhiannon. "Yes." "What do I do?" "You invite Tavi. You seat them where you want to seat them. You tell Corin the decision has been made. You do not reopen it. And you watch what he does. What if he gets angry? Then you will have learned something important." Corin did not get angry. Exactly. He got something that was worse than angry, which was the thing Corin did when he did not get his way, which I was, at that point, 10 months into the engagement, beginning to recognize as a pattern. He went quiet. He went cold. He did not fight. He did not sulk visibly. He simply removed, for a period of 3 to 5 days, the warmth that was the baseline of our relationship. And he acted, during that period, as if he were tolerating my existence rather than choosing it. The cold was, I understood without being able to articulate, a punishment. The cold was the thing that made me in the past eventually give in on the issue that had caused it. The cold was, I had come to realize somewhere around month 6 why the logistics of the relationship were always his logistics. This time, because Rhiannon had told me to, I did not give in. I held. For 5.5 days, I held. I did not bring Tavi up. I did not apologize. I did not try to repair it. I went about my life. I worked. I went to Pilates. I called my mother. I had dinner with Rhiannon and Davy. On day 6, Corin thawed. He came home from work. He kissed me on the cheek. He said, I've been being an ass. I'm sorry. Of course we'll invite Tavi. Of course. He was, that evening, warm and attentive, and we had a nice dinner, and we went to bed, and he was the man I had fallen in love with. I cried in the bathroom for 10 minutes after he fell asleep, because I was relieved, and because I was exhausted, and because I had just learned, in a way I could not any longer ignore, that I was in a relationship with a man whose warmth was conditional, and that the condition was my compliance, and that the withdrawal of warmth was a tool he used, probably without even fully consciously intending to train me. I told Rhiannon the next morning. I told her about the crying. I told her about the realization. Rhiannon said, Lark, yes. Are you going to leave him? I don't know. Okay. Rhiannon, Lark, I am not going to tell you to leave him. You know how I feel. You have known how I feel for 2 years. You know I have watched him for 2 years. You know I have, at every opportunity, shown up for you in the way I can show up, which is to watch and to ask questions and to refuse when asked, to lie to you about what I see. But I am not going to tell you to leave him. You know why. Why? Because if I tell you to leave him and you don't leave him and you marry him, I become a thing in your marriage. I become the friend who was right. I become the person you can never fully introduce to him without tension. I become a weight you carry. Lark, I love you too much to become a weight you carry. So I am not going to tell you. I am going to say I love you. I am going to say, if you leave him, I will be there in 20 minutes with a suitcase and a plan. I am going to say, if you marry him, I will be your maid of honor, and I will throw the best bridal shower you have ever seen, and I will never mention any of this to anyone else, including you, until or unless the marriage ends, at which point I will be there in 15 minutes, not 20. But I am not going to tell you what to do. Do you understand? Yes. Okay. I did not leave him. I want to tell you why, because I did not leave him is, I think, the hardest sentence for many readers of this kind of account to sit with. The hardest sentence to sit with is not, he was a bad man. The hardest sentence to sit with is, I knew and I stayed. I want to tell you why, because I think there are many women who will recognize themselves in it, and because I think the reasons are worth saying out loud. I did not leave him because I was 33 and I had spent my 20s watching my friends pair off, and I had been single for 1.5 years before him. And in that 1.5 years, I had felt, in a way I had not been able to admit to myself, a specific low-grade loneliness that I had not known how to solve. I did not leave him because my parents loved him. I did not leave him because his family loved me. I did not leave him because I had, in the 3 years of our relationship, built a whole aesthetic around us. The apartment we had moved into, the specific kind of weekends we had, the specific kind of friends we saw, and leaving would have required dismantling an aesthetic that I had spent 3 years constructing. I did not leave him because the wedding had been paid for. I did not leave him because I was afraid of being 34 and single. I did not leave him because on his good days, he was still the man who had remembered the hotel from the magazine for 1.5 years. And on his good days, I could convince myself that the good days were the real him and the cold days were an aberration. I did not leave him because leaving is a thing you have to decide, and I could not decide. And when you cannot decide, you do not leave. I married him. The wedding was in September at a vineyard that Corin's parents had found and that I had, when shown the photographs, agreed was beautiful. It was beautiful. The photographs from that weekend are still on a hard drive somewhere in my apartment. I have not looked at them in 5 years. I do not need to. I remember the weekend. Rhiannon was my maid of honor. She gave a toast that was, by every objective standard, one of the best toasts ever given at a wedding. She was funny. She was warm. She told stories about our friendship. She told one story, specifically about the bar mitzvah bathroom when we were 11, which she told in a way that made the entire room laugh, and which I understood, in the specific way you understand things at your own wedding was both the story she was telling the room and the story she was telling me. She did not, in the toast, say anything about Corin that was not loving. She did not sabotage. She did not send signals to the room. She was the best friend she had ever been. She did not break. The bouquet toss came near the end of the reception, around 10:30. I had not wanted to do one. Corin's mother had insisted. I had, in a state of exhausted compliance, agreed. The DJ announced it. The single women gathered. There were, I think, 11 of them. Rhiannon was, technically, not a single woman because she was married to Davy, but she stood in the group anyway, because that was Rhiannon's style. She stood at the back, slightly behind the others, looking at her phone. I turned my back. I threw the bouquet. I want to tell you what I remember. I remember throwing it with almost no force because I had decided in the half second before throwing that I did not want to make anyone lunge for it. I remember hearing a small group sound from behind me. I remember turning around. Rhiannon was holding the bouquet. She was standing in the exact spot she had been standing in before. She had not moved. She had, in fact, not raised her arms until the very last second. The bouquet had come to her in that arc that bouquets sometimes take, as if the air itself has opinions about where things should land. Every other woman in the group was looking at her with a specific mixture of amusement and mild jealousy that women reserve for the moment when the person who catches the bouquet is the person who already has her life figured out. Rhiannon was looking at me. She walked across the floor, holding the bouquet. She came to me. Corin was next to me. I was laughing because what else do you do? Rhiannon hugged me. She hugged me in the specific way she had hugged me at 11, at 16, at 23, at 31. She held me hard, and then she put her mouth next to my ear and she said, very quietly so that no one else in the room could hear, "Lark, you can still leave. Any day you want. I'm here." She pulled back. She smiled. She said out loud, "I'm going to give this to Davy. He's going to think it's hilarious." She walked off. I turned to Corin. Corin was smiling. "What did she say?" He said. "She said, 'Congratulations.'" I said. He kissed my cheek. I want to tell you about the next 2.5 years because the whispered words at the wedding were, as I said at the start, the last time Rhiannon warned me, and the warnings were not necessary anymore after that, because the things she had been warning me about, and more, began to happen, and I was no longer in a state of needing to be warned. I was in a state of living in it. The cold got colder, the good days got fewer. Corin got a promotion in year 1 of the marriage, which should have been good, which was instead, in ways I'm going to try to describe briefly, not good. The promotion meant more money, which he celebrated by buying a car he had wanted, alone, without consulting me and then telling me about it over dinner as if it were a surprise. The promotion meant more hours, which he used to arrive home later and to begin a pattern of business trips that were, I would discover in year 2, not entirely business trips. The promotion meant he became, in subtle ways, more convinced that his judgment was the correct judgment about everything, including things that had nothing to do with his job. He became, across year 1 and year 2, a more confident version of the man I had married, and the confidence manifested, always, as small erosions of my own. In year 2, there was an incident with my sister's wedding, at which Corin got drunk in a way I had never seen before and said something at dinner to my sister's new husband's mother that was, objectively, one of the worst things I've ever heard a person say out loud in public. He did not remember it the next morning. He apologized when told what he had said, with a specific kind of performed regret that I recognize now as the performance it was. He sent my sister flowers. He sent her new husband a bottle of scotch. He sent the mother of my sister's new husband a handwritten card. He told me that night that he had been under a lot of pressure at work and that he was going to dial it back. He did not dial it back. 2 months later, he got drunk at our own dinner party and made a different mother uncomfortable in a different way. And I realized, sitting on our couch after the dinner party with the dishes not yet cleared, that I was married to a man who was going to keep doing this forever, and that I was going to spend the rest of my life writing apology cards. Rhiannon, across those 2.5 years, did not say a single "I told you so." I want to be clear about this. Not one. She came to dinner. She invited us over. She treated Corin with the courtesy of a woman who had decided, on her own terms, that she was going to be my friend in this marriage the way a boat is a thing you stay in when the weather is bad, not a thing you steer. She watched. She waited. In month 29 of the marriage, I called her from the bathroom of the apartment Corin and I had bought in year one. It was a Tuesday evening. Corin was at a client dinner that I had, by this point, stopped believing was a client dinner. I was sitting on the edge of the bathtub. I was 36 years old. I said, Rhiannon, I think I need to leave. Rhiannon said, Where are you? In the bathroom. Is he there? No, he's out. How long until he's home? I don't know. Okay, listen to me. Do not do anything tonight. Do not pack. Do not write a note. Do not confront him when he comes home. You are going to act normal tonight. Tomorrow morning at 9, I am calling Pauline. You remember Pauline? Your cousin, the lawyer. My cousin, the lawyer. She is going to see you Thursday. I will drive you. You will go to work tomorrow as if everything is normal. You will come to my house Thursday morning and we will go to Pauline together. You will not tell Corin anything until Pauline tells you to. Can you do that? Yes. Lark. Yes. How long have you known? I sat on the edge of the bathtub. I thought about the question. I thought about the bouquet toss. I thought about the dinner at Corin's parents'. I thought about the dock at the lake house. I thought about the cold days that had gotten colder. I thought about the 11-year-old in the bathroom of the bar mitzvah. A long time, I said. Okay. Rhiannon, I'm sorry. No, you don't apologize. You don't apologize to me for this. Ever. Do you hear me? Yes. I love you. I love you. Thursday. Pauline was everything Rhiannon had promised she would be. Pauline handled the separation with the same competence that Ruth had handled Marcus's, the same competence that Odette had handled Thomas's, the same competence that Dinah had handled so many of the stories I had quietly been reading online in the last year of my marriage, the last year in which, unknown to Corin, I had begun to build a folder on my laptop called Miscellaneous, into which I had been, for months, copying things that Pauline would later thank me for. The divorce took 11 months. Corin did not take it well. I will not detail it because the details are his and because the details are not interesting and because anyone who has been through a bad divorce has seen versions of the details. I will tell you the only detail that matters, which is that on the afternoon that the papers were finalized, I drove to Rhiannon's house and I parked in her driveway and I sat in the car for about 10 minutes before I could get out. Because I was, in the way a person is after a thing has finally, fully ended, leaking quiet tears that were not really about sadness, so much as about the release of 3.5 years of held breath. Rhiannon came out of the house. She opened the driver's side door. She did not say anything. She unbuckled my seatbelt. She took my hand. She pulled me out of the car. She walked me into her kitchen. She sat me down at the kitchen island. She poured me a glass of the specific kind of whiskey she keeps for occasions, which is a thing she has been doing since we were 23. She did not say a single word for about 10 minutes. She made me a plate of cheese and crackers and sliced apples and fed me in the way you feed a child who has just come home from a long day. When I had eaten, she said, Lark, I have one thing to say and then I'm never going to say it again. And I want you to hear it and then I want us to move on. Okay. I am sorry I was right. I started crying properly then. Not the leaking kind. The deep kind. Rhiannon came around the island and she held me and I cried into her shoulder for a very long time. At some point, Davy came home from work. I heard him come in. I heard him assess the situation. I heard him, without saying a word, go into the pantry, take out the spaghetti and the canned tomatoes and start making dinner. Rhiannon did not release me. Davy did not interrupt us. He cooked the entire meal with one hand while his wife held her best friend and his best friend's ex-wife in their kitchen. And when the pasta was done, he served it onto 3 plates and he set one in front of me and he said, Eat, Lark. And I did. I want to tell you 2 more things, and then I am going to stop. The first thing is that Rhiannon never, in the subsequent years, brought up the warnings. She did not say, Remember when I told you at the lake house? She did not say, I never liked him. She did not say any of the things that she would have been entitled by any ordinary standard of friendship to say. She did not gloat. She did not debrief. She did not, once the divorce was final, ever speak of Corin again unless I brought him up first, and even then only briefly, and with the same warm, careful attention with which she had always treated every man I had ever been involved with, who had eventually turned out to be the kind of man she had warned me about. She was, in this way, the best friend I have ever had. She was also, I want to say, the best example I have ever seen in real life of a person who understood the specific difference between loving someone and being right about someone, and who understood across 30 years that the first is almost always more important than the second, and that a best friend's job is to be right privately and loving publicly, and never to let the two leak into each other except in the one specific moment when the loving and the being right can be compressed into a single whispered sentence at the back of a bouquet toss where no one else can hear it, and where the person who needs to hear it will either be ready or not ready, and where you are not responsible for which. The second thing is about the bouquet. Rhiannon kept it. I did not know this until about 2 years after the divorce, when I was at Rhiannon's house one Saturday morning, and I went upstairs to use the bathroom, and I walked past her guest room on the way back down, and I saw, through the door, which was half open, a small shadow box on the wall. I had not seen it before. I walked in. The shadow box contained a dried bouquet, small white roses, baby's breath, a bit of eucalyptus, the bouquet I had thrown at my wedding. I stood in the guest room for a while. I went back downstairs. I did not mention it. I did not ask her about it for another 3 weeks. When I finally did, over coffee at her kitchen island on a Saturday morning when Davy had taken the kids to the farmer's market, I said, "Ree, why do you still have the bouquet?" She did not look up from her coffee. She said, "Lark, I wasn't going to throw it out, but I was never going to throw it out. I caught it. It was mine. I was not going to treat a thing I caught at my best friend's wedding as garbage because the wedding turned out to be garbage. The bouquet is not the wedding. The bouquet is what you threw. You threw a bouquet at me at your own wedding, Lark, and it came to me and I caught it, and I have always caught whatever you have thrown to me, and I am going to keep catching it for as long as we are both alive. I put it in a shadow box because I wanted to look at it. I wanted to remember the moment when I whispered to you what I whispered to you, because I am proud of the whispering. I am proud that I did not lose my nerve. I am proud that I said it one more time, even at the end, even when I thought it wouldn't land. And I am proud, Lark, that you eventually heard me. Not that night. That's fine. But eventually. I sat with that. Rihi. Yes. You could have stopped warning me at some point. No. No? Lark, that's not how it works. You don't stop warning the people you love because the warnings don't land. You stop when they land, or you stop when you die. Those are the only two options. If I had stopped warning you in year 2 and the marriage had been fine, I would have been grateful. But I didn't get that lucky. I had to keep warning you, and you had to stay married for a while before you could hear me. And then you did hear me. And I got to say the thing I had been saying for 3 years and finally have it mean something to you. And then I got to stop. Ree, Lark, I love you so much. I love you too. Drink your coffee. Davy's going to come back with strawberries. He always gets too many. We're going to have to eat them all today. Davy came back with too many strawberries. He always does. We ate them all that afternoon, the 3 of us plus the kids, on the porch in the late morning light of a Saturday in May. And Rhiannon, at one point, while Davy was helping their younger one peel a strawberry, looked across the table at me, and she gave me the specific small smile she has been giving me since we were 11. Which is the smile of a woman who has known me for longer than either of us has been anyone else. And I smiled back, and nothing needed to be said, because Rhiannon had said, across 3 decades, exactly everything that needed to be said to me, and because I had eventually heard her. I want to say one last thing to any woman who is reading this, because she's recognizing something in it. If you have a friend who is watching you date a man and who is, in her specific, careful, loving way, trying to warn you, I want to tell you something. I wish someone had told me at the lake house, or at the engagement party, or at any of the points along the way when I was rationalizing. I want to tell you, your friend is not wrong. She may be early, she may be unsure of the exact shape of what she is seeing, she may not have the specific piece of evidence that would make her case in court. But if a woman who has known you your entire life is, across months and years, making observations about a man you are planning to marry, and those observations are consistent, and she is willing to absorb the social cost of making them, and she is being careful with you rather than careless, and she is not, importantly, saying these things to anyone else but you. Believe her. She is not jealous. She is not trying to steer you. She is not trying to insert herself into your life in a way that serves her ego. She is offering you the single most useful thing any friend has ever offered any friend, which is the view from outside your own hope. And she is offering it at risk to herself, because friendships do not easily survive warnings that don't land. And she is offering it anyway, because she loves you more than she loves the comfort of the friendship. If you are lucky, you will hear her eventually. It may not be the first time, it may not be the fifth, it may not be at the wedding, it may be, as it was for me, 29 months into a marriage, sitting on the edge of a bathtub, finally calling the one person who had been waiting to receive the call the entire time. She will pick up. She will not say I told you so. She will make the call to Pauline. She will drive you. She will hold you in her kitchen while her husband makes pasta. She will keep, in a shadow box on the wall of her guest room, the bouquet you once threw, because the bouquet was never the marriage, and the marriage was never the friendship, and the friendship is the thing that catches what you throw, and catches it again, and catches it again, for as long as you are both alive. That is the whole story. The rest of it is strawberries on a porch in May with a woman who has been writing your name in a notebook since you were 14. Between Anna and Bryce, who has not crossed out a single name in all these years, and who, I want to tell you, has still not crossed out mine.